wasn't on. All right, let's see who's all here. So fun. Welcome, welcome. So nice to see all of you. Who is so excited about the holidays? I just see you all popping on. I've got to tell you the cutest little story. Oh, welcome, welcome. Christmas is on its way. Yesterday, I cut out a bunch of pajamas. They're so cute. It's so much fun. So we're having lots of Christmas traditions, lots going on. I want to hear from you. So, of course, I'm Dara Thomason. I am the life coach for quilters. I help quilters lose the weight and keep it off and create the life that they really want to have. It's so fun. It's like the best thing ever. So I have my one-on-one clients that I take through this journey and I give them individualized attention. And then I have a group coaching program that's incredible. And it's a great group of women. And I have 12 modules that I walk them through in a very systematic way. The three premises to the way that I teach about weight loss and how to create the life that you really want is: one, is weight loss science is simple. Two, emotions are the key to the universe. And three, I help you create a future you whom you really love being. So in the chat, I really want to hear when you think about the thought, or when you think about Christmas 2020, I'd love to hear what your thoughts are and what are the feelings associated with that. So what are your main thoughts about Christmas 2020? And then what are the feelings associated with that? You can put them in let's just pick one because it's hard for me. So let's do it in the chat. So for Zoom, it's easier if it's on the chat. So what are your thoughts? And what are the feelings that come? So I'll start. My thought is, this is an incredible opportunity. And then my feeling is like wonder. Okay. I also have a thought like it's going to be really sad not to have my big parties because I really love entertaining. Okay, we'll put it in the Q&A. We'll start in the Q&A. So don't put it in the chat, put it in the Q. Things are looking up. Right. They have the vaccine in Canada. Isn't that exciting? I was thinking about that this morning because one of my friends, her neighbor is a respiratory, she is like a respiratory person for babies. And she got first dibs on the vaccine because if things like she's able to take over respiratory, because obviously COVID affects that. I've almost made it to the end of this crazy year. Excited about the vaccine. Okay, put all the comments in the Q&A if you don't mind, because I can't have both chats open. It's too hard for me to keep. I'm loving the leading up to Christmas. My husband helped to decorate, so we're in this together. I've done the usual baking and I'm sharing. Wonderful. Okay, so put it all in the Q&A. Awesome. Right, so when you have that, like we're all in this together, and then you feel like unified, you feel loved, you feel all of those things. So looking forward to seeing my kids, though we'll miss our son. That's right. Yeah. So we have a lot of different thoughts. Now, if you didn't get the PDF, I will be resharing it in the replay of this video. But I really wanted you to think about, and if you haven't been able to watch, this is my 6th video about the holidays, because I know that when we have, we know that we have the motivational triad. Our lower brain wants us to stay safe, seek pleasure, and conserve energy. And so one of the things that happens with that is it's like when we've done something a certain way, we just know that way. So driving, right? We all had to go through the pain of learning how to drive and doing all the things. But once we learn to drive, it's pretty straightforward. It's like, oh, my body has learned this. I have muscle memory. It's even like free motion quilting, right? my feathers, I had so much fun doing that whole cloth quilt of feathers because my brain has figured out feathers. I've practiced feathers. I've taught feathers. I just like eat, breathe, and sleep feathers now. It's been so great. And so it's something I enjoyed. But in the past, feathers were like painful, awful. So this is one of the things I want to really have you think about. Christmas in the past, we kind of knew the things that weren't awesome about it, but we had this there's a real comfort knowing that it's like, oh, and then we just do this and we do that and we don't have to like rethink anything. It's just like, oh, this is what we do. And so now we are having this change of our holidays. Like we're not going to the Christmas concerts. We're not having like I'm not having my sushi party and I'm not having my Christmas Eve party and I'm not going to the regular parties and doing the things. And so my body's kind of like, or my brain is kind of like, oh, well, if I'm not doing all the things I used to do, I have to think of new things. I have to expend energy in different ways. What? This is and then so then there's like some discomfort, right? Because it's like, oh, I have to think of things new. So that is where, if we're staying in our lower brain, what that says, seek pleasure, conserve energy, and stay safe, that can cause us a lot of friction because we're not doing all the things that we've normally done. And we know how to do those things. We know how to make lists and we know how to go to the grocery store and we know how to do all that. And we know how to plan our time. So that is something I've been thinking a lot about. And yesterday I was listening to a podcast in preparation for this class. And it was, there's a really awesome podcast out there. And it's from a university professor at Yale. And it's called The Happiness Lab. It's a great podcast. I would highly recommend it. And Dr. Laurie Santos, she was very intrigued what was happening with her students, because of course Yale is like a high and upper, like the very, very, she gets the cream of the crop students. And she was seeing so much anxiety and like stress, like over the top, she'd never seen before. And it was happening more and more. And she was like, what is happening to all of these students? Like, these are the best of the best. And she designed a program called, I can't remember what the name is, but it's about happiness. And the podcast really explores all these different concepts. And like one of the examples was that silver medalists in the Olympics, they actually have a lot more depression and difficulty than bronze, because they were like almost gold, but they weren't. So she had a whole episode called The Silver Lining, and it was with Michelle Kwan and how she got silver and all that. It's fascinating. So I would definitely recommend that. It's a great listen. And there's actually so she offered a free course on campus to any student. And it was so well received that they had to do the final exam in like the largest auditoriums over campus. And it couldn't even just be in the largest. And so you can actually take the course for free online. So if you want to do that over the holidays, it would be great. So anyway, so yesterday I was listening she had a panel of some really high-end professors and talking about what to do over the holidays and how to make the best of it. And it was really going along the lines of what I'd already been thinking about. And so it was kind of fun because I had been thinking about this, and then it was confirmed by these professors. And the thought is, just because we've been doing something a certain way doesn't necessarily mean it's the best way. And one of the best things about COVID, and especially for our family, is that we are now given an opportunity to kind of step back and start asking ourselves, is this something we really like? I think there's a little bit of a programming or an expectation that says, you should do this, this, and this. Life should look like this, this, and this. And when we can kind of step back and be like, do I actually like doing this? Does this really serve our family? Like, what do we like about this? Then we can make some decisions about moving forward and being the driver of our own life rather than feeling like, oh, in order to be a good mom, I have to have, so many kids and so many activities. I have to be running around and doing all the things. So when certain circumstances, literally certain circumstances have changed, right? We have restrictions in stores. We have, we can't go swimming. There's a lot of things that have actually changed. And so it's been interesting to look at when we have a different circumstance, what's happening with our thoughts, and then how do we feel, and then we can make some decisions because our actions are actually different too. Like, we can't just go swimming. We can't just go to the movie theater. We can't just do certain things because our actions are restricted. And then we can really look at what's going on in our thoughts. So that was one of my favorite that's one of my favorite things about COVID is that I'm able to start looking at my life in a way that I'm like, oh, so just because I did that, and like one of the examples is home church. I really love going to church. Our family goes to church every Sunday and I love it. And I never imagined life without going to church every Sunday because all my whole life I go to church. But when they said we can't have church and they really give priority, and then when they opened up church, they gave priority to single women because in our church they take us like the sacrament, and my sons actually are able to give us the sacrament. And so that was priority for single women, widows, and all of that they could go to church. And once I was able to like reconcile that I need to be that we have home church, then I was able to take that opportunity and really become the mom that I wanted to be and give my children opportunities to learn and to really go into the scriptures and learn concepts and gospel principles that are really important to me, and then having those discussions. And so I get to decide. It's like, okay, well, we have a standard now. We still get dressed up for church. We have a routine. We have all this. And that has brought so much joy into our family and our own spirituality. So it's just been really, really interesting. That's an example outside of Christmas. But we have different actions that are restricted. There are different circumstances because we have COVID restrictions and then we always get to decide how we want to think about them and ultimately how we want to feel. So that leads me to the first part of our assignment. So remember last week when we spoke about joy plans? What is your joy plan? So last week we talked about losing the weight and not the joy at Christmas. And we talked about, how do we lose weight? We talked about weight loss science, simple. What is the job's food description? How does food create joy for you? And then how do you make yourself happy? And that was your job description. So if anybody would like to share in the chat, what were some of the ways that and then I had the last part was create your perfect Christmas holidays, permission granted. So I would love to hear some of your thoughts of how you are going to do that for yourself. So I know from my one-on-one clients, some of the things they're doing are, one of my clients, she went and got herself a new kitty. And it was a lot of effort. But she's like, I'm going to have this new kitty and I'm going to go and make that happen. And it wasn't easy. There was a lot of logistics and all of that. There was some flights involved and all of that. But she's like, that is going to bring me joy knowing that she has this new kitty that's going to be in her home. What are some other things that we can do? I know and she's on the call here, she's quarantining. Her family are quarantining, before Christmas so that when they get together, they can actually get together and know that they are in integrity with all the COVID rules. So she's willing to have the discomfort of that. Another client is making more meaningful gifts for herself and for other family members. Okay. So, and as they're making the gifts and they might feel a little isolated and sad, they're knowing that what they're doing with their time and their effort and all of that is going to be such a benefit and show that love to their family members. So, what are other things that you can do? Okay, so if we want to put those in the chat, please feel free to do that, or the Q&A. Okay, so I want you to think about your joy plan. One of the things about a joy plan is everything we do in life is because we want to feel a certain way. So we always decide how we want to feel. Isn't that incredible? We actually get to decide that. And when we have a negative emotion, what happens to a lot of people is they will avoid or try to resist that negative emotion. And so when we avoid and resist that negative emotion, it just makes it worse, right? So I like to say to people, well, you're going to have to feel a feeling anyway. So might as well make a decision of what kind of feeling you want to have. So if you're feeling disappointment, or you can, instead of just trying to avoid disappointment, you can say, oh, I'm just a human feeling disappointment right now. And then if you can just allow that disappointment, then I will just let that be. And as soon as you can just let the disappointment, like it's like a wave, it just goes through you and you're like, oh, disappointment, that feels heavy on my chest, or that feels really uncomfortable in my stomach. It's okay. I can just feel disappointment. And then we can just let that be. And then after it's gone, because emotions are literally just vibrations in our body, then that's all the way through. And then you're ready to move on to the next part. So Colleen said, I got 2 canaries about 6 weeks ago. My mom always had a canary, and I finally decided I wanted that lovely song every day. That is joyful. That is you taking charge of your own life and saying, I've always wanted a canary. I love hearing a canary sing. I'm going to create that for myself. And even in that decision, when you have a canary, guess what happens? You have to clean a cage. It's not all magical and wonderful all the time. It's the balance of life. So it's like, okay, I have a canary. I really enjoy her singing. I don't really love cleaning the cage. Or you could be like, I'm cleaning the cage because I love the canary. I'm willing to do this. This is not a problem. Right? It's how you think about it. All right. So in here, I want you to write down the tips. So I'm going to give you a bunch of tips, and which is really fun. One of the tips that I love to do for my holidays and is to make a plan. So whoever's watched Shrek, he says, plan to fail, fail to plan. I love that. And so when we plan, and some of my clients, and some of, even in my own life, I would think, oh, I don't really want to make a grocery list. Just so much time and effort. But really, what's worse? Taking 15 minutes to make a grocery plan, because I'm going to go to the grocery store anyway and buy food. But then I know Monday is this, Tuesday is this, Wednesday is this, and I know that I have all the food, as opposed to on Wednesday being like, what are we making today? Oh, darn it. I forgot to get the meat out. What am I going to do? It's like tuna casserole or tuna melts, or I don't know, soup, right? So I could do the 15 minutes of a little bit of discomfort being organized and trying to make some decisions, or throughout the whole week, I'm going to pay the price of me not planning ahead. So what's one of the things that, and we talked about this last week, that I really loved, and I'm just going to bring this on the screen, is when you're making this plan, and that's one of the rules, is, we have to make sure it's 80% that you're going to be able to do it. That your plan is your very own protocol. You're not going to just do what I'm doing. And you have to make the plan with loving you, loving your body, and loving the food. And so here are a bunch of suggestions of how to, so even if you're feeling like a little bit overwhelmed on the holidays, maybe just no snacking. Maybe if you just even picked, I'm just not going to snack over the holidays, and just commit to that one thing. How different is that going to be for your holidays? Or maybe you just say, I'm just going to stop when I'm satisfied. How different would Christmas dinner be if you literally just stopped when you were satisfied? Or maybe you just pick, I'm going to just move my body more. I'm just going to, my daughter has she has a iWatch or iPhone, and she's so funny because she's 16. Yesterday, she like ran 2 kilometers in her room. And I could hear this, like, her room was right beside my studio. I could hear this like bounce, and she's like, yeah, mom, look, like afterwards. She's like so excited. Like this phone is really exciting to her, right? She's like, I'm just going to move my body. So I want you to just decide on one of those things, or maybe even 3 things. Like, I'm just going to have 7.5 hours of sleep. I'm going to make sure I drink my water, and I'm only going to eat sugar and flour when I planned it 24 hours in advance. Wouldn't that be incredible? And if you knew that you were 80%, like you felt like that's going to be successful. And by the way, if you doubt it and you make a plan, but you really don't have a lot of trust in yourself, don't do it. Because breaking trust with yourself it corrodes your relationship with yourself, and it corrodes your success. It's like self-sabotage. So we're not going to do that. Okay. So I do really love that. And I know that that's going to be super successful. Last year at the holidays, I just said to myself, okay, for December 24th, 25th, and 26th, you can eat whatever you want and you don't have to feel guilty. Yes, I gained 5 pounds, but I enjoyed those 3 days. And it was because otherwise I felt it was just too much. Right? If you stretch an elastic too far, it's going to break. So you have to take yourself from where you are. So this year for the holidays, I'm so good at planning 24 hours in advance, any joy eat. And so that's my plan. I'm just going to plan any joy eat, and I'm just going to honor my plan. My drinking my water is really good. I do have to keep an eye on it though, because I'm out of my routine. I've got my routine. And so I'm like, oh, I got to remember to do my water. Okay. So then I make a plan about what's my water routine going to look like. Maybe I'll say I'm going to move my body 3 times a week. I'm just going to go, there's a 6-kilometer hike really close to where I live. And I'm just going to do that. But if I don't think I'm going to do that, and I'm like a little bit nervous, I'm like, I'm just going to do it once a week. No big deal. And if I do more, great. But I know if I commit myself, that's huge. Okay. So that is one of the ways that I have been able to enjoy my holidays and not worry about my weight. Because like last year when I said, I'm just going to eat those 3 days and I'm not going to plan anything, I'm not going to do it. Then when I gained that 5 pounds, I didn't make it mean anything. I'm like, oh yeah, that's what happens. But I have been now coaching people for over a year, and really full time since March. And so my muscles are so much stronger. I don't even really have that same desire. So I'm a very different person this year than I was last year. So for me to say, I'm just going to plan in advance, it's a no-brainer. It's like, of course, that's what I always do. Do I have some special things that I bought? Yeah, I bought some Icelandic chocolate for my husband, and I'm really looking forward to that. And I just planned it, and I know how much I'm going to eat, and it's not my regular. It's like milk chocolate, but it's from Iceland. My husband and I went there. Our last name is Icelandic. So it's like, yeah, I'm just going to plan that. I'm going to enjoy it, and I'm not going to overeat it or anything. Okay. So make a plan. Use this. This is going to be so, so helpful. Um, Now, another tip that I love is I buy food that works for me. So I went to Costco on Monday and I bought egg white tortilla shells. I'm like, oh, that's cool. I bought some cream, this nut butter thing. I'm like, oh, that's cool. Like I bought some kind of fun things that were like a little bit more expensive than what I would normally buy, but I'm like, my body's worth it. I'm worth it. And so I just always take care of me. So we have chicken wings planned. It's our tradition, the last day of school. So we're going to do potato wedges. I'm doing sweet potato wedges. I'm like, I just make my own. It's no big deal. So I just make sure that my cupboards are stacked with foods that I enjoy. I'm going to do Italian sodas. So I bought these keto friendly syrups that are like chocolate peanut butter. So fun. Hazelnuts. So fun. Burnt caramel. So fun. Those are ready for me. I'm just taking care of me. Okay. So buy food that works for you. I'm making sure I have enough almond flour and the Lancanto sugar, so I can make some peanut butter things. I've got the Lily's chocolates. I'm taking care of me. I never want to feel deprived. Um, so the other thing that I do is I spend a lot of time is my future me. So as my future me, so when I think about myself a year from now and 2 years from now, um, I think about how does she celebrate? What does she do? So one of my favorite tips to enjoy the holidays and not worry about the weight is I first of all I remember what the role of food is, and second of all, it's like who do I want to be? So I love giving. I love being very generous. I love being generous with my time. I love being generous with money. And it hasn't always been easy for me to be generous with money because I have a whole story with money and all of that. But this year I made some decisions about how I wanted to spend my money on the holidays. And when the lower brain kind of kicked in, I was like, oh no, no. I made that decision ahead of time. And as my future me, she's very generous with money and she's very generous with her resources. As a mom, as a sister, whoever it is, people that I know, if they're really struggling, it's like I just make a budget of like how generous I want to be. And I just get to decide. And it doesn't actually matter how they react because I'm doing it for me. So is a certain family member who's really struggled over COVID and has not been able to run their business the way that they would normally. There's so many restrictions. And so I just made a decision of what I want to do to support them. And I don't need anything. I don't need a thank you note. I don't need a thank you at all. It's like so much fun for me just to be able to do that for that family member. And that's where the joy comes from. I have zero expectations. It's so fun. So that brings me to my next tip of this concept that I teach my clients of being 100% responsible for yourself. It's called emotional adulthood. So when I know that I am 100% responsible for my feelings, I have no conditions. I'm unconditional with the love that I give. I'm unconditional with the things that I do. And it feels amazing. So I don't have to say, if I give this person or I do this act of kindness, I don't need anything in return because the me doing the thing is the joy. So that is huge, my friends. We can just give because we want to, and that's the joy of it. So how often does this happen for you? How often do we set ourselves up for failure? So this goes along with another tool of a manual. So we all have rule books, but we don't actually realize this. So I've shared this before when we got married. My mother-in-law is very big on punctuality. We talked about this, I think, last week. And so she has a definite rule book about being on time, being early. Oh yeah, we talked about, people shared like how early was early and all of that. So we have rule books, especially around the holidays. We have like the holiday edition of rule books. And depending on what kind of family you grew up in or what kind of expectations, it's going to be very different. So, if you have the rule that for every gift you give, you need a thank you letter in response, and you don't get a thank you letter, you're setting yourself up for failure, because there's a condition of, when I do this, I expect this return. So, one of the biggest ways that you can have joy in your life is by realizing that not everybody has the same rule. So, I like to do this little joke about it. And I mean, it is I like to have fun. So, but it's almost like we are this director of a play, the play of our life. And we say, okay, in order for me to have the life that I really want, that's going to be joyful and wonderful, everyone has to follow yeah, totally. Everyone has to follow this rule. So I'm going to be the director of the play, and I'm going to write some scripts. And so, Susan, this is your line, and Susie, and like Johnny, this is your line, and Mom, this is your line, and Mother-in-law, these are your lines. And so, in order for everything to go really well and smoothly, all you have to do is just follow the play, the script. I wrote it for you. It's all done. Okay, and this is, take a step back for a second. How many times do you find yourself driving in your car or sewing or quilting or doing dishes, and you think things like, well, if they just did this, that would be so much better. If they should, if they just, why wouldn't they just do this thing? If they just did this one thing, then they would be so much life would be so much easier for them or for me or whatever. It's because it's usually for us, right? I really want you to be honest with yourself. How often do you have that in your head? If they just did this, then. Why do you think that happens for us? I want you to put it in the chat. Why do you think when we say, oh, well, and I used to do this a lot, especially with family members, or if I was on a committee, or if I was working with someone. Why do you think we do that? Because that is what is comfortable for us. Why else? Tell me why. Right? If they did this, then you can feel better. But why do we think that that's true? Yes, it gives us a feeling of control. Because what is the opposite? I think we get in the habit of doing that. Yeah. What else? These are good, you guys. We think we know best. Yeah. Why else? I'm pushing you a little. I love pushing you a little. I love pushing myself a little in the nicest, most compassionate way. Why do you think we do that? Because if people don't do what we want them to do, what is the negative emotion that we could feel? So when we talked about being in control, I think they are inconsiderate, right? We have a judgment. What else? Right. So I really want you to think about that, because, oh, I think I'm missing your comment. Disappointment, right? You can be really disappointed. We feel disrespected if they are very late for no good reason, right? So ultimately we are giving it. Oh, it can make us feel that we aren't important enough to do it our way. So what's happening is we think that what other people do or other people say makes us feel a certain way. Oops. We think that. But that's not true. Nobody can make us feel any way. Nobody can. The only way we feel anything is the thoughts that we have about it. Like someone could say to me, oh, this is such a silly example. I'm going to just share it because it's so silly. So when I was at Quilt Market in Houston, so I'm 6 feet tall, and I saw a lady, and she was like 6'2", and she was probably like 60. And it was really fun for me. I don't look up to people very often, literally, like figuratively, I guess. No, literally. I don't look up very often to women. And I kind of approached her and I said, oh, it's so fun to see like another tall person. This is not a word of a lie. She said to me, oh, I'm not tall. She's like, you're short. She's like, I'm average. That's what she said. And I said, oh, really? She's like, yeah, I'm from Amsterdam. And she's like, you're short. I'm average. You should go to Amsterdam if you want to see a tall person. Okay. So she said words. And the only way that I could be offended or disappointed or frustrated or whatever negative emotion is that my thoughts about her words. That's the only way I can feel a negative emotion, is the thoughts I have about the words that she said. Isn't that fascinating? So people can say words, and then we just have to decide how we want to react to those. Always. So one of the things that I've been thinking a lot about is in life, that we basically have two different choices. We could have math or drama. So for example, math, it's like, let's say COVID, right? It's like this is math. Like this is a disease, a pandemic. There is a thing that it's like a virus that goes in your body and it can affect you in different ways. Some people, it turns their lungs into Swiss cheese. Some people, they have to get their leg amputated. Some people just die immediately. Some people just are like, they lose their sense of taste and it's like no big deal. But there's like, this is just math. Like we have corona, it's a virus. It affects people in different ways. So we can wear masks and wash our hands and social distance, and that will protect us somewhat. But we don't know exactly, and this is what we can do. Or we can have drama, like it's ruining my life. I can't see my grandchildren. Everything is ruined. Like that, we can totally decide how we want to react to that. It's 100% in our control. So when we learn these concepts of I'm always responsible for my own feelings, nobody can make me feel anything. I always get to decide about how I want to feel. And I have this rule book, and not everyone follows the same rule book. And so when I judge people by my rule book, I cause myself some disappointment. Oh, okay. Simple. Right? And that way I just know, oh, the part of being a human is we have negative emotions, and negative emotions are just literally vibrations in our body. We can just process them. And then when we process them, now we can operate from our higher brain. And we are humans. We are the only ones that are capable of really working from our higher brain. Isn't that amazing? So fun, right? I'm always getting to decide how I want to feel. So we talked about emotional adulthood. We talked about the manual of, we all have rule books. And the problem is when we judge other people by our rule books, like sometimes I think, oh, they didn't get the memo that they're not supposed to cut people off on the road. Isn't it amazing when you go to different cities or different countries, like how different the general population is about driving? They're like, oh, that's so interesting. We actually like signal lights and we like shoulder checks. But apparently in some places That's like optional, right? They have a different manual. They have a different way of doing things. Okay, we talked about our joy plan. And one of the things about a joy plan, oh, buying food that you love because we never want to feel deprived. So we're responsible for our food. We have a plan that we're going to make that's going to fall, that serves us well. Also, part of the joy plan is you dream and make the kind of life that you want. So you get to decide like how generous you want to be. You get to decide the kinds of ways that you spend your time. You get to decide all of that. Okay. So this year, my kids are finished school early, so we have a whole week before Christmas. I'm like, that's a recipe for disaster. They're going to want to open their presents. They're going to be so impatient. I know what to do. Let's go away for 3 days, 4 days. Let's go surfing. Let's go change the environment. Let's go do different hikes. Let's go explore the island that we live on. Done. Okay. Well, social distance. We're not even in a hotel. We're in like a little cottage. It has its own separate hot tub and everything. So it's like I just created my own joy there. Now, the last thing I want to share, I could go on and on. I have so many strategies, but the one thing I wanted to share was, and that's kind of going back to the very beginning of what I talked about, was we have limitations and we have, our brain wants to say it's not going to be the same as it was. But what I want to offer to you is just because it's not the way that it always has been doesn't mean it can't be amazing. Something I heard someone say at the beginning of COVID, they were saying, the world, the way it is, isn't actually perfect. We have a lot of homelessness. We have a lot of children that go to bed hungry. Our society wasn't super fantastic guaranteed. It wasn't. Like, we have problems in our society. We have racism, we have sexism, we have, like, it's not super awesome. And so it's not actually that terrible that we can start looking at things in different ways. A very simple example, my daughter has tutoring. I didn't really love that I'd like drop her off at her tutor's house and then I have an hour to kill and then I would have to go do something and then I have to make sure I was back there at a time. I actually really like Zoom. Zoom was really great. She's still getting the quality of tutoring. She can do that still, but now I'm saving a lot of money on gas and I don't have this like hour where I'm like, trying to do these errands and feeling rushed and all of that. It's fabulous. I'm like, I really like Zoom for that. It's very efficient. So when we think about things in new ways, it does mean that our brain has to think again. It has to think outside the box. And that goes against our wiring, right? Of seeking pleasure, conserving energy, and staying safe. So doing something new does cause some risk, does have a potential of having difficulty. That's okay. But when we have these tools of like being able to kind of step back, then we can look at things in a different way. So I want to do this little exercise with you. So in this holiday, and this is interactive, so if anyone wants to get coached, you can put your hand up and I'll bring you on the screen, but I have a little activity. So what are the things that you miss the most about the way Christmas is right now with COVID restrictions? What do you say do you miss the most? Who misses Christmas concerts? What else do we miss? What do we miss right now? So Christmas concerts, parties. I actually really like Christmas parties. What else? Getting together to do a lunch or dinner with friends. What else? family, my mom, having people come stay with us. Movie out for dinner. Yeah. It's kind of fun. Going out to the movies, doing things special. What other things do we miss? So when you think about the things you're going to miss, like going to the movie, going out for dinner, getting together with friends, Christmas concerts, I love that. So what is actually what are you actually missing? I miss the feeling of community. I feel the feeling the connection. I miss the traditions. I miss caroling. I've heard that when you are learning something new, you use 20% of your energy of your brain, normally for 2% of the energy in your brain. Yeah, something along those lines, right? So that's why our lower brain, like we're wired for that, right? Is that it does take more energy. So think about it when you are driving. So let's say you're driving home, that commute, you've done it 100,000 times or however many times. It's autopilot. You don't have to use energy. You can listen to the music. You can be having the background noise, all of that. But if you're looking for a new address, how hard is that? It's so hard because you have to focus, you have to concentrate, you have to look at street signs, you have to, maybe someone's telling you the third left turn right, the third road turn right or whatever. You can't really listen to the radio. You don't have that same energy in your brain because you're like, I got to focus. Right. Yeah. So, definitely. And so our brain has to take more energy to come up with things. So that was interesting, Maury, when you said harder to connect on Zoom. And it was interesting to listen to the panelists yesterday as I was preparing for this, when they talked about Zoom, because one of the problems with Zoom compared to our family events, like when we have a family event and everyone's together, it's like these people are doing this thing, those people are doing that thing. You can actually just go and sit on the couch for a while and just like have some alone time. But Zoom is kind of like we're all looking at each other. It's like we're on performance. It's just really unnatural. And so one of the suggestions that they gave was to do something like a book club where you just have something that is kind of holding your attention, but it doesn't require you to be, it can take the pressure off different people, and you can just have this kind of book club kind of event where the theme is the book and then other people can have their different roles. So that was a really good suggestion. All right. So I'm gonna have to leave a few minutes early today, but I really want to challenge all of you to think about what you're missing. But I'm telling you now, it's completely available for you to still have that emotion. So going out to a movie with friends. What about going to the movie? Because that's actually neutral, it's a circumstance. What is the feeling? Is it connection? Is it excitement? Is it doing something special? Is it like, what is that? Is it an escape? So that is just a circumstance. And then you have your thoughts about it. Okay. So you are completely able to still have that. You can do that in a different way. And one of the best news about all of this is that we are quilters. We are creative and we are amazing human beings. Our brains have done incredible things. Marlene, what was that biggest quilt you ever made? Like how many thousands of pieces? It like blows my mind even. We can take all these different pieces of fabric that random people designed. We can cut them with very specific tools and very specific measurements. We can then reassemble them in beautiful designs and connect them all together and create something like a work of art. Like we are super amazing and talented and beautiful, and we can do all sorts of things. Okay. 7,083 3/4 inch hexagons. Like that blows my mind, right? We know how to commit to something. We know how to create beauty. We know how to create joy. So I want you to take that skill set that you have in that you got from your jobs, that you got from raising kids, being community members, all of that. And I want you to take all of those amazing qualities that you have about yourself and channel that into creating joy for yourself. All right. So if you want to take this work further and you are not already one of my one-on-one clients, let's get on a call and talk about it. If you want to go through my 12-step, 12 modules to really understand weight loss science is simple, emotions are the key to the universe, create a future you whom you love, come to my group. Commit yourself to this. Watch my videos. It is so much fun for me to watch my clients literally shrink before my eyes. Their bodies are shrinking, but their lives are becoming more and more full because they're remembering what the role of food is. Does anyone have any questions before I go? All right, ladies, you know how much I love you. I'm so glad you're on this call. If you have any questions or anything you need help with, please don't hesitate to contact me. I love you all. Have an amazing, amazing Christmas. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.